Okay, I gave this talk yesterday, and I'm glad I did because I could sort of see where I got to go fast in part of it, and today I'm going to go slower, faster on the equipment end, slower on the actual processing end. And the reason why is because, truth be told, I'm one of the laziest astrophotographers in the world. And if I can get my software to do most of the work for me, I'm going to do it. And I started out doing DSLR the classic way. You know, you're supposed to shoot flats. You're supposed to take dark frames. I even went so far as to deconstruct the Bayer mask, thing with the red, green, blue, and all that did was end up with this huge mess because I couldn't put it back together again. And I thought, Adobe, who has trillions of dollars, has spent that much money creating all of these fantastic things that you can do with Camera Raw. And as each progressive stage of Photoshop came along, you also got a better Camera Raw algorithm set. And so I got all the way up to CS6 with my Canon D6, and it was impressive. There's about 30 different things you can do to a Camera Raw frame. And I thought, well, if they've gone to all this thing, I'm going to really investigate this, and I did. And what I found was fascinating, so I'm going to share all that with you right now. So let's start this program. This is the official entry slide. Okay. So first thing I'm going to say is a DSLR is not a CCD. That's where everybody makes their first mistake. They think that they're the same, and they're not. They're not even close. This is a CCD camera. You've all seen cameras like this, of course. It's got regulated cooling, it's got filters, it's got a different kind of chip. There is no way that a DSLR is going to be like a CCD. A CCD has cooled, regulating temperature, it's got a mono chip, doesn't have a Bayer mask in front of it. And this is important, the primary noise is hot pixels and cosmic ray hits. I know you've got read noise and all that other kind of stuff, but primary noise you deal with at CCD is what? Hot pixels and cosmic rays. It's so sensitive, it actually records cosmic rays hitting it. And then you also have very accurate color control because it's a mono chip and you're putting these very well-calibrated color filters in front of that mono chip to get your color and your narrow band if you're shooting it. Okay. And with a CCD, with that great sensitivity, you can take really, deep pictures like this, and I got to say that you're never going to match this with a DSLR. You might come close, but you're never going to really match it. So this is the realm of CCDs, okay? It'd be a big mistake to try and do narrowband like that, I think, in my opinion, with a DSLR. Okay, but speaking of a DSLR, here's the one that I think is the best today. It's the Canon 6D, and you can get it modified by somebody like Ted at Hootech. That's what I use, and it's worked very well. So a DSLR has no temperature regulation. You get color by the Bayer mask by splitting it up into red, green, and blue. And the primary noise, and this is really important, it's not cosmic ray hits, it's not hot pixels, it's what I call color mottle. And any of you guys who've ever shot at ISO 6400 for like 2 minutes with a f5.6 lens, then tried to stretch your picture, what do you see? This huge field of red, green, blue dots and all kinds of garbage everywhere, right? And this model is big. It's like, I don't know, it's like 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 pixels in size. The advantages of a DSLR, if it's going to compete with a CCD, it's got to have some advantages. So it's easy to focus with live view. It has very low power consumption. If you're up on top of a mountain somewhere trying to get a Milky Way shot, you don't have to drag, 3 deep cycle batteries with you. Short exposures. Instant gratification. You can see your results immediately on the screen. Fast setup, which is also really good. And the most important one is minimal equipment. If I'm going to fly all the way to Peru or something to get, the Milky Way from the Atacama Desert or something, I'm not taking my CCD equipment. It's just no way. So there are some huge advantages to DSLR. Here are some samples of what I call single frame images. These are images that are just taken with one shot. So a DSLR can take pictures like that, and that would be very hard with the CCD because that Milky Way is going to be moving, and by the time you get through your red, green, blue, how the hell are you going to put all that together? It'd be very difficult. And here are some pictures that my friend Wally Pacholka has taken Again, very difficult with the CCD, but with the DSLR, it works great. Most of these were taken, by the way, with the Canon 6D. I think that's Lake Tahoe. And this is in the middle of the winter in Yosemite. Okay, so those were all single frame shots, even if they were a panorama. He took a picture, took a picture, took a picture, and he put them together. What I got interested in was somehow increasing the signal to noise of a DSLR. And I did that, and I ended up with pictures like this, which no single frame can ever match the depth and the color of this picture. This is like 9 frames, all dithered and put together. Same thing with this. You can see the signal to noise here. It's remarkable, all the black stuff and everything, and I really like that picture. So back to color model. This is what color model looks like. It's all this horrible red, green, blue. I've exaggerated it here. And if I blur it a little bit, you can really see that we're getting these huge globs of green, magenta, yellow, blue, all this stuff in the background. This is what I call color model. It's not hot pixels, and it's not, cosmic ray hits. It's color model. Color model is your number one enemy when you're using a DSLR. And what I wanted to do was I needed to invent some way to get rid of that. Okay? And the way I did it was through dithering. Dithering is where you have a known center of your field, and then between each exposure, you move the camera about maybe 2 or 3 star diameters, up, down, left, right, in between each one. And why should we do that? The noise on your camera is constant, okay? Every time you take a picture, all those red, green, blue, yellow pixels that you see on that color model, they're always going to be in the same place. So if you move your camera a little bit between each exposure, a couple of star diameters, up, down, left, right, like that, and then you go scrolling through all of your pictures that you took, what it's going to look like on the screen is that your stars are going to be going like that, right? Okay, now, here's the trick. Here's where we pull the rug out from underneath that color model. We go into a software like Registar, and we align all the stars. Guess what happened? All of the color model now became a random pattern. So instead of having a blue on top of a blue on top of a blue on top of a blue, now that you've turned it into a random pattern, you've got a blue sitting on a green, sitting on a yellow, sitting on a red, and they cancel each other out. So you end up with a completely neutral background. And this is the only way I've ever found of addressing this problem adequately. So here is color model. And here it is with the model gone. See that? We can actually see there's some blue nebulosity right there. See it? Right there. And there's a red nebula here. I'm going to back up. See, here's the color model, and you cannot, for the life of you, you cannot see that there's that blue and red nebulosity there, can you? There's not even a trace of it. But when you use this thing of dithering and average the noise out, now the real data that you recorded from the sky, which happens to be aligned with the stars, is going to record, and you're going to get rid of all the model. Now I want you to take a look at these 3 stars right here. This one, that one, and that one. I'm going to go to show you what all of this is a part of. It was all a part of that picture. That's Rho Ophiuchus taken with a DSLR, not with a CCD. And the reason we got all of that beautiful detail and color is we learned how to kill the color model, and we increased our signal to noise. So the 3 stars you were looking at were that one, and that one. And there's the red and the blue nebulosity that you saw in the close-up. So is this pretty cool? So now I'm going to show you how easy it is to do this. This is what I found to be the best equipment so far, and I went through several years. I did this for about 3 years, going through all kinds of equipment. That was the best camera. This is, all in my humble opinion, the best lens for 70 to 200 millimeter focal length, the Canon f2.8 ISL-2. That lens is amazing. This is the best wide-angle lens that I found. It's the Nikon 14 to 24 millimeter zoom f2.8G. And then right here, I have a NovaFlex adapter that allows you to attach that lens to your Canon body and actually run the aperture also manually. That's a very good lens. Unfortunately, everything I'm showing you here costs a lot of money. This is about $2,000 for that one lens. This one isn't made anymore. This is a full-frame fisheye that Canon used to make before they came out with that zoom. It's a 15mm f2.8, sharp to the corners, phenomenal little lens. You can probably still find them used. And then here's the sleeper of all time, the Rokinon 35 f1.4, which only costs about a third as much as the famous branded lenses. And how do you know if a lens is going to be really good for astrophotography? My favorite place to go is PhotoZone, right here. See, PhotoZone? We'll look at this lens in PhotoZone. It shows you how much vignetting you're going to get. I usually shoot at f4, so that's actually pretty low right there. And then it shows the performance of the lens. And you'll notice right there, anything above 3200 is excellent. And at f4, not only is the center excellent, but the extreme edges of a 35mm are also excellent. This is rare to find that. Same thing here at a different focal length in the lens. And a chromatic aberration is where a lens cannot focus the red, green, and blue all in the same spot. You might end up with a blue circle or a red circle, around a star. Again, at f4, you can see this lens is remarkably low. So what about the Rokinon? Okay, you go on the site, and I usually shoot around f4. You'll see the vignetting at f4 is almost non-existent. And at f4, check it out, folks. All the way up to 3200. You almost never see that in a lens. A wide-angle lens all the way up to 3200? Are you kidding? For 1/3 the price of what those big famous lenses cost? Total sleeper. This is the chart of one of those famous lenses. So I'm not going to mention any names. I'm not going to embarrass anybody, but you know who you are. And you can see, not even close. Not even close. So you can spend 3 times as much and get a crummier lens, or you can go on PhotoZone and check out the performance of the lens ahead of time to get some idea what you want. Again, here the chromatic aberration at f4, extremely low. And look how consistent they are all the way across. Hell of a lens. That's it for equipment. That's it for color model. And now we're going to see how Tony actually does the processing, all right? I'm just going to go right into it. What I do is I use Adobe Camera Raw. And I have learned how to make Adobe Camera Raw take 16 of my images and do all the processing for me. Okay? All I have to do is load them into a Camera Raw. I was in film strip mode, and I'd list all of the frames right here, right down the side, okay? And then I just go to work on this first frame here, okay? The first thing I want to do is if there's any trace of chromatic aberration, I want to get rid of it. So here you can see I've exaggerated the magenta here. See that chromatic aberration there? Okay, they have a control for that. Gone. So even if a cheap lens, and you got chromatic aberration, you go into Adobe Camera Raw for CS6, and they have a thing in there that senses the chromatic aberration and gets rid of it. The next thing is vignetting. All the lenses that you get are going to vignette. And in the past, we had to shoot flats to deal with vignetting, right? To even out your field. Well, if you're shooting in 16-bit data, you should have enough information in a 16-bit file to be able to mitigate any kind of vignetting that you have. And Photoshop has this fantastic thing. You see right here how dark that is, right up there in the corner? Okay, now watch. Gone. Don't have to shoot a flat. You just use the anti-vignetting control in Adobe Camera Raw, and you're done. Remember what I said? I'm really lazy. Don't want to shoot flats. Don't want to shoot darks. Don't need to. Then we go to sharpening and a very, very good noise reduction algorithm. It's every bit as good as Noise Ninja, maybe even better. You apply that. And then I go into curves, and I'm going to pull down on the red curve to get rid of some of that red bias we got in the picture, increase the contrast a little bit, and now we're back to a normal-looking picture, okay, that has no chromatic aberration, no vignetting. It's basically perfect. All right. What we're shooting here is the constellation Cassiopeia. You can probably make it out here, 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 and here. There's Cassiopeia. And I wanted to record all of the nebulosity and stuff that's in the constellation. Okay, so finally, we tweak this a little bit using those little sliders we've got here. Most people go to the sliders first. Don't do that. go over all the way to the right where I was, and work your way to the left. So very important, when using camera raw, start over on everything on the right, and then work your way over to the left. Now, we've got this one perfect frame, right? And here's the beauty. I tell camera raw, see, here's what I want you to do. Now, do it to all of these. You know, in the past, I used to actually laboriously go in there, open up every one of those and say, apply previous correction, blah, 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 blah. Took me like, I don't know, 10, 20 minutes. I found out that you don't have to do that. They have something called synchronize. You just hit synchronize, and it'll say, okay, what do you want us to synchronize? You see that list right there? That list is everything that you can do in a camera raw to that file. Look at that list. Look at all the stuff you can do. It's unbelievable. It leaves Maxim DL in the dust, you know? I mean, really, all the stuff you can do in Adobe Camera Raw to a raw 16-bit file is absolutely amazing. But anyway, I say, yes, do all that stuff that I've done. And so it goes, done. All 16 now have all of that goodness that I just applied to that one frame. And then we need to go and save this, and you have the parameters of the images. You can set this so that you have your color space. I usually use sRGB, bit depth 16 bits. Here you can even say how big you want the file to be when they turn it into a TIFF, and the resolution, and I click OK, and then it says here save images. I designate a folder, I'll call it Cassiopeia. It's asking you how to save it into what folder, and I say go. And so it takes about 5 minutes to take 16 frames out of Camera Raw with all the nice things you did to those images, and it saves it into a folder. Okay, so now you're halfway home. The next thing you got to do is you got to somehow take 16 frames and align all the stars. And for that, since I'm really lazy, I go into Registar. Right here, I've got a frame open in Registar. And the important thing is that you go to multiple source. See what says multiple source? There's a little bit of a learning curve with Registar, but actually it's pretty easy. All this garbage over here, you can just leave it in default. The important thing here is to use multiple source, and you need to have all of your files in a folder so that Registar knows where to go get all these files. And then I say, okay, Registar, go ahead and align them. And I walk out for another 5 minutes, go have a coffee, donut, whatever. When I come back, all of the files have been aligned star by star. Registar doesn't just look at the picture, it analyzes every single star and puts all of the stars on top of each other. Extremely accurate. When it's done all that, I go over to this little squares, click on that, and that's your combine control. And the combine that you want to use in Registar is this one right here, called median mean. And that is a very slick thing, because what it does, a mean is legalese for just averaging something together. So the mean is going to average all those frames together, and that's where you get to take a red pixel, blue pixel, green pixel, yellow pixel, average them all together, and they come out perfectly neutral. But it goes one step further. It also has a median component to this, which means that you see right here this little shooting star I recorded? Maybe I don't want that in my picture. It's going to find the outlier in each frame, and it's going to reject them. So not only does it average everything together, it also acts as an outlier rejection algorithm. I just click OK, and there it is, combine one. To see the improvement we got, take a look at this. The one on the right, you can see how coarse and grainy, and there's some spurious colors in there and everything. The one on the left is absolutely smooth, because we have now averaged 16 frames together, and you've gotten rid of all the color noise and everything. Once we got that, we just save it as a 16-bit TIFF file, and there it is. There's what I call the master frame. We now have the master frame 16-bit TIFF file with all that goodness buried into it. Okay? High signal to noise, sharp stars, no vignetting, no noise. Now, one of the problems is that when you start stretching a very busy star field like this, you can get the stars to go nuclear on you. And I'm not going to go through now how I did it, but I did list it, okay? This is Photoshop enhancement technique using various algorithms to kill the stars and actually bring up the nebulosity. And when we do that, there is your final picture. That was taken with just a wide-angle lens and a DSLR camera. Beautiful picture, high signal to noise. And I even went so far as to label some of the denizens of this area. Cave Nebula, Bubble, 1396. You're probably all familiar with these as telescopic objects. But here I was able to pick them up with just a wide-angle lens and a DSLR camera. So my method is expose at least 9 highly dithered camera raw frames. By highly dithered, I mean not a couple of pixels, but you need to go a couple of star diameters. And the reason for that is that the color model is big. It can be 5 to 10 pixels in size. So if you just go a couple of pixels, that's not going to do it. You got to go about, I'd say, 2 or 3 normal star diameters, up, down, left, right, diagonally, however you can do it. Go around, around, around. Then you process all of those files in Adobe Camera Raw and save them as 16-bit TIFF files. Take all of that into Registar, align and combine, and then use the median mean algorithm to combine all those frames together once they've been registered together. And then you import this high signal-to-noise master frame into Photoshop for final processing and tweaks, whatever you want to do. I want to show you here a sample of how powerful this is. Okay, this was taken last year when we had all those forest fires up in Oregon, remember that? And we had that giant fire down in Yosemite. So up where I live, the sky was just brown. And you can tell, see how brown that looks? It's horrible. So I shot about, I don't know, 9 or 10 or 12 frames of this using all of those techniques, combined it in RAW and Registar and everything like that. Here's what came out. Unbelievable. We got rid of the noise. We were able to, adjust, get rid of the brown. It went right through all that smoke and everything, and we got this amazing shot here, I think, for the time that we had. And my last goal was, could I create something with a DSLR camera and a small telephoto? I had a Borg ED fluorite for this, that little 3-inch one. It's really cute. I attached that to my Canon 6D, and that's the result. It came pretty close to CCD, not quite if you know where to look, but it came awfully close. So that's as good as I can do using this technique with a little telescope and with the Canon 6D. And I think if you actually went and shot some deep sky objects using all of the same technique, you'd probably come pretty close. It wouldn't be quite as good, but you would, for the amount of money and everything else, you'd get awfully close. So that's how I do DSLR, and that's the end of the show. Anyway, thank you for watching. Appreciate it.